Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another spotlight interview with Global Thought Leaders, an initiative by RightSource Global. I am Zishan Pathan, Director at RightSource Global and a Council member of Global Thought Leaders. Along with me, I have my colleague, friend, and a Council member of Global Thought Leaders, Heval Mehta, Chief Growth Officer at RSG. Global Thought Leaders is a platform for industry stalwarts to cross pollinate with their experiences, thoughts, ideas, and best practices to inspire each other and future leaders. Through spotlight interviews, we strive to bring the community of eminent personalities together from across the globe. We collate the multi decadal learnings acquired by proliferating brains in a nutshell. We bring the expertise of various functions, roles, and sectors together on one platform to inspire future leaders. We have one such industry stalwart today on Spotlight with us, Gurmeet Chadha. Gurmeet is a renowned individual in her function. I would request Havel to introduce our today's eminent personality.
Well, thank you so much, Zishan, for giving me this opportunity to introduce Gurmeet. And I'm sure everyone is aware about Gurmeet, and she does not require any introduction. However, to talk a little bit about Gurmeet, it's an honor. Gurmeet is an experienced HR leader with expertise in the areas of strategic business partnering, driving change, leadership development, talent management, HR strategy formulation, career frameworks, diversity and inclusion, and employer brand management. She is passionate about creating a culture of employee experience, co-creating an organization culture and digital culture for the best of experience of an employee. Her previous stints prior to joining NCML as their Group CHRO include working for automotive giants like Delphi Automotive Systems, Caparo Corporate Services, and private equity funded startups like Renewable Energy, Sembcorp Green Infra Limited, and Ayana Renewable Limited. She was featured in EQ International magazine as one of the leading top 32 women in solar sector. Congratulations, Gurmeet, for that, and welcome to the spotlight.
Great to have you, Gurmeet. In fact, behind every success journey and every successful person that we interview, we know that there is an unheard story behind, right? So we just want to know the same from you as well. So, Gurmeet, what are the key highlights of your journey from the beginning of your career till the current role of Group CHRO at NCML?
Right. So essentially, I started my career with Delphi Automotive Systems. It was a Fortune 500 company. I joined them as a trainee, and I actually began my journey, doing anything what probably a trainee would start with. But eventually, I moved into a cultural transformation role. So in Delphi, we had something called Team Delphi, which was a cultural makeover concept. So I was trained by Delphi Singapore to become a trainer, and not just so it was more about training on the cultural aspects of what Delphi Worldwide wants to be. So that was a great experience for me to work with the global leaders of Asia Pacific region, and not just Asia Pacific region. In fact, globally, even in the US and Europe, with all the leaders to come up with trainings and cultural transformation of all the employees at Delphi. So it was more like a cultural makeover of the organization that I participated in. I moved into then being with organizations which were essentially, into renewable startups, which were started by IDFC Private Equity or CDC. And there primarily because they were startups, so I had to kind of realign and put in place everything that is needed for an organization function. More than that, it was the entire leadership hiring. It was networking with the leaders across the industry, putting a brand image for yourself to get good people on board was something that's been very, very close to me. And by the end of 10 years that I was in the renewable energy sector, I was nominated as the top 50 women in the renewable energy, and I was featured by the EQ magazine. So that's essentially what was and of course, being part of Sembcorp Green Infra, that was Green Infra, which is IDFC private equity company, was taken over by Sembcorp, which is again, one of the topmost Singapore-based organizations, and again rates as the topmost organizations of the globe. So working with the Sembcorp team and the Indian management and the Sembcorp management, and to bring about their entire change in the organization, dealing with the fears of people, dealing with the inhibitions of people, was a lot of challenge. But I think their communication with all the employees played a very, very major role, at least for HR, because at that point of time, what employees needed was a lot of transparency, and they wanted to see an HR leader who can communicate without hiding things, without telling them that you may lose your job, you may not lose your job. So just balancing the whole act was something that was done pretty well by the HR function. So these are some of the things that I feel that I can always kind of take credit for essentially the creating a fabric of the organization more from the cultural point of view. So that's I feel have been a few things that I've done personally which are important to me. And yeah, coming to NCML. Now, NCML is extremely close to my heart because it's a very, very different organization than the organizations that I've come from. So NCML is an agri-warehousing organization. It's very large. Large when I say it's relatively large to the kind of organizations that I've worked for in the past. So NCML has been about realigning everything from the processes, policies, talent management, talent development, then performance management, because it's a kind of a legacy organization when we took over, and the entire management is new right now. We have people coming from large MNCs and taken over charge of so now we call it NCML 2.0, and there's a lot of work that's been going on the people front here. So I'm very glad to be part of this, and we've already started seeing a lot of difference in the whole fabric of the organization. And also from the so this whole HR work is kind of it's very cliche when people say talent management, when people say performance management, but at the end of the day, what makes the difference is that you weave the same work with the kind of organization that you are in. And this being an organization where I joined, and there was COVID which came in right soon after I joined here, so everything had to be looked at from the COVID lens. So so that was the real challenge. So while performance management in a general scenario would have been a different thing, or talent management, but here you saw everything from the COVID lens, and you had to really see what is going to work and what is not going to work. And fortunately, things are working very well, and we've been trying to make a lot of difference to the entire aspect of HR, from each and every smallest process to the biggest process, from the lens of COVID, from the lens of I would say when I say COVID, I actually feel that it's more to do with the empathy, bringing in empathy in your systems, bringing in sensitivity to your systems, being kinder to people when you are rolling out, things like scorecards and things like that, because it's not about putting people in the last side of the curve. It's about bringing people up from that side of the curve to a topper curve of let's say performance management. So those are certain things that we've been doing in NCML, and it's so far I think it's doing good.
Well, that's an amazing journey, Gurmeet, I must say. Gurmeet, you contributed a lot into bringing change into the organizations, right? So what are the key changes you brought in your function to make it more efficient and effective, especially when you're working in a post-harvest supply chain giant like NCML?
Right. So essentially, you see, NCML, like I said, it's a relatively large organization. It's a spread to organization. Like we have warehouses, about 800 warehouses across India. And there are people sitting in those warehouses, and the connection with those people is not very large, because we sitting in the Gurgaon office and people spread across cities like Buxar or Kaimur, some of the places that probably you're not really heard of very often. So I'll start with small things, which kind of made a huge difference, and I didn't know that they would make a huge difference till I was actually, as in when I say I actually mean my entire HR team. It's, we as an organization. So first thing, let me start with the policies. Okay, I'll give you a very small example. Travel policy. Okay, now our travel policy, we tried to, and we looked at all the policies from the industry benchmark, and we kind of phenomenally made changes to the policies to make them really, really employee and employer friendly, and I would say more tilted towards the employees because of the time that we are in today. And so essentially the first thing was on the travel policy. That's the feedback that I got is, one of the employees sitting in the warehouse actually called up to say that, this travel policy that you changed has made so much of a difference, because earlier I used to think twice before, moving out my vehicle to the warehouse. And he was a cluster manager. He would move from one warehouse to another, and he would say that, he said that actually it was a pain for me because I felt that I would end up spending money on my own. But the new travel policy with increased entitlements, and we included something like per diem. So per diem was something like, you have these incidental expenses for which you don't get the bills, and they could never claim those kind of incidents because they are in such remote locations. So that feedback coming from the manager, and when I say manager, who's actually a cluster manager looking at, although very, very junior person, but that meant a lot. And while we were looking at the policies, this kind of thought had never come in, that it would create so much of an impact, and people would be so thankful for just changing the whole entitlements, the way the policy works, introducing things like per diem. So that was one. Secondly, on the digitization side, so we have now digitized everything in HR, right from sourcing till exit of the employee. So things have become so transparent, especially very helpful for people at the warehouses, because like I said, distance was an issue, communication was a challenge. So now they are just a mouse click away. We have introduced things like Vibe. We've introduced things like pulsometer, just to gauge how our people are doing. Our pulsometer just simply says, how are you feeling today? And we quickly get results of how are our people actually feeling today. Are they happy, sad, distant, or how do they really feel? So that's really made a difference, because at the end of the day, if we get a result where a lot of people say that they're not feeling too good, it's really something to think about. So that's one thing that we've done. Third thing is, on the communication side. When I say communication, I always say that over communication is never a word, because communication is like extremely important for the organization. So we've introduced two concepts in communication. One is chai pe charcha, which is, of course, literally we cannot have chai today in today's environment with everybody, because we're all kind of working from homes and things like that. But we will start that soon once things get better. So here we are involving the top leaders of the organization, including HR, to talk to the lowest most person in the organization. So we have something called a diagonal slice meeting. So we cut the org chart diagonally, and how many, and it's not biased because it's a diagonal cut. Whoever comes into that particular framework are the people who are chosen to have a direct conversation either with the MD or with the president or with the CEO or CFO, and HR, of course, is always there as part of those communications. So people who actually felt pretty unheard at a given point of time are feeling heard now, because there is somebody listening to them. And it's not just listening to them, within a week's time, we get back on the actionables. We tell them, okay, this is what you talked about, and this is what action we have taken, on the things that they would kind of share. Then there's another thing called Milap that we've started. Milap is an initiative, purely an HR initiative, which is again talking to a lot of people, which is again getting to understand their issues, their concerns, their suggestions, their thoughts on how we can make our organization better. So a lot of communication is something that we have really, really built on in the last 1 year, and that is really trying to make that has made a lot of difference, I would say, because earlier, with this kind of a setup, talking to every person was not really possible, but now that has become possible. Then, in this time, we brought about changes in the insurance policies. So earlier, our insurance scheme was 2 times of CTC in case of any personal accident or death. We made it 3 times of CTC. We've increased the limits. Then there was a COVID insurance policy that we put in place. So even if you're at home and something happens to you and you're not well, all your expenses will be taken care by the COVID policy. So yeah, these are essentially a few things. Besides that, like I would say, warehousing industry is not a very organized sector. It's a little disorganized from the point of view if I compare it with other organizations, because warehousing is a business like that. So there was never any study done on benchmarking of salaries of guys, third-party contractuals who are actually working at the sites. So that's something that we've started. We've started working on the skilling and upskilling. So never before there has been an exercise where we are actually gauging the skill levels of guys who are responsible for fumigation at the work at the warehouse. What is that they do really well is something that we're trying to gauge. So we're trying to bring in promotions from within. Guys who are employees who are actually at the warehouse or responsible for opening the warehouse, making sure that it's fumigated, counting the material, getting the material in, getting the material out. What else can they do is something that we are kind of working on to make them believe that that's not where their limit is. They can do a lot better, and we're trying to promote such associates to, let's say, officer, senior officer level, getting them into different roles in different offices, and not just restricting them to purely being in the warehouse. So these are a few things I would say that I've done in the last, we've done in the last 1 year at NCML.
I must acknowledge, Gurmeet, that these were wonderful initiatives. In fact, I really like the concept of chai pe charcha, right? And I really think that this would really motivate and, in fact, give a motivation to the millennial workforce as well into the organization, right? So that logically brings me to the another question, that is dealing with the millennial workforce, right? So dealing with the millennial workforce has become a different ball game as the young generation prefers work-life balance with flexible schedules and telecommuting. So what are the principles you suggest for fluid task management with gig economy?
So essentially for the gig economy, what matters the most is, you need to keep on, they need to keep on upgrading themselves on their skills. They need to kind of, because if they are working at different places, at different tenures in different organizations, it's very important for the gig workers to be able to really skill themselves with the right skill sets. I think artificial intelligence would play a major role in terms of assessing their skill sets. It's like a passport kind of, artificial intelligence can be used, if I can say that, as an easy passport for them to really gauge what is that they're really good at, and then use those things, those skill sets to kind of move to different places. But I mean, this concept of gig workers is, I understand it's still coming up, and it's still kind of in a lot of millennial organization people may want to kind of move into it. But I personally feel that social security is very important for an individual. And if gig workers can get that kind of a social security, I think that will be very good for them than some kind of an insecurity of not being able to get to the next level. So I think the social security aspect, if that is something organizations can take care for the gig workers, that would be good.
Great insights, Gurmeet. Gurmeet, you have played a very vital role in organizational transformations, right? And in fact, HR function in itself is undergoing a rapid transformation. You spoke about technologies like artificial intelligence. So how do you see it evolving in near future, keeping in mind the latest development in artificial intelligence and machine learning?
No, I think it is emerging, it is evolving, and it's already doing a lot. I mean, at least in the hiring process, I feel today, by the use of these algorithms, you can screen volumes of CVs in seconds. You have CV parsing happening. What I feel is that, I mean, we as humans, we are quite prone to unconscious bias. Even when we are hiring or we are promoting someone or we're looking at a compensation of somebody, somewhere the unconscious bias just kind of builds in, right? So I think that's where AI will play an important role. So whether it's screening of the candidates, whether it's fairness in appraisals, whether it's even diversity and inclusion, for example, a CHRO who's more responsible for diversity and inclusion at the workplace will be able to look at the data and say that whether promotions have been equitable, whether hiring has been equitable and things like that. But at the end of the day, my personal view is that while it may be an enhancement tool, but it's definitely not a holy grail. People still remain, the root of everything, and you can't replace that. And that is something that's always going to stay. I mean, AI is here to emerge. It'll make a lot of difference, definitely. It'll also start making a lot of difference in terms of gauging the emotions of people when they're writing emails and things like that. You can actually get the tone of the message, but at the end of the day, you just can't leave it to AI. It's your relationship with your people that will really make you feel whether the message was written in the right tone or in the wrong tone. So I think you can't replace people by AI, but definitely it's going to emerge and it's going to make lives easier. But yeah, like I keep saying, that it's not a holy grail.
Great insights, Gurmeet. And in fact, not only technology, there are other aspects as well which are playing a vital role in organizational transformation, for that matter. So what are the key people strategies which are helping organizations to promote diversity and inclusion?
Right. So more than strategy, I think it's the will of the organization, of the people sitting at the top to believe in this, first of all. I mean, it's more like it's more like, you decide that we want to be an inclusive workplace, and then there is no end to it, essentially. To give you small examples, for example, when you were working on the insurance policy, and we HR people do it every year, we revamp the HR policy. So how about, why is that things like LGBTQ community, involving them in the insurance scheme? We never hear of these things, right? We never hear of things like, it's always about self, spouse, and children, and nobody talks about the same-sex spouse. It's just not there, and things like, I remember in one of the organization, which was pretty old to me now, they didn't cover parent-in-laws. They only covered parents, which was something which is just not doable, right? I mean, what's the logic of covering parents? But I mean, sorry, they didn't cover the girl's parents, but they covered the girl's parent-in-laws. Okay, so I think that was again one place where it was not inclusive, right? I mean, what's the point of girls not being able to cover their parents? So that's not inclusive totally. But now, of course, things are changing. Then things like, if you have siblings or if you have children who are disabled, why have an age limit for them to cover them under the policy? So these are a few things, this is just insurance point of view I'm saying, but these are a few things that come to my mind. And, when people are writing job descriptions, I don't know why they always say he, he's supposed to be this and he's supposed to do that. And that's more on the gender thing, So we've made very clear at NCML that the policies will become, the JDs will be completely gender neutral. We're not going to accept anybody like a he or a she for that matter. So small things, put up value posters, put up behavior cards in the office, imbibe gender diversity inclusiveness as part of your compulsory policy, which everybody has to sign off in the organization. I think these are a few things that I think if the organization, and a lot of things I feel flow from the top. And if the top believes in it, I don't think that there will be any way that, it's not followed, because that's the norm of the organization. And that's actually given. I don't know why we need to build a strategy around it. It just should be given, right? I mean, we talk about our policies. We say we're equal opportunity employer. We accept people, who are disabled and things like that. Very recently, when we were working on our digitization front, on our profile view page, we actually kept disability as one of the area where people could freely write if they were disabled in any way, whether physically, mentally, or whatever. But these things need to be opened up, and when we were working on a profile page in the digitization phase, we didn't keep marital status as something which is compulsory. We said, why should it matter to us, even if you're divorced or you're married or whatever, unless you want to cover your children in the policy, which again, like I said, that you don't need to be married to have children and cover them in the policy. So these things need to change as a mindset more than anything else, So I think it's all about mindset. And once the mindset is clean and everything, yeah, HR can play a lot of big role in this by organizing workshops, by organizing, like I said, value posters, behavior cards, putting things in the policy, making sure that everybody signs off the policy. However, at the end of the day, it's the mindset of people that needs to kind of move ahead of things.
These are wonderful insights and initiatives, Gurmeet. And I definitely agree to that point that these are small little things, if taken care of, can really create a big impact in the organization. So, coming to the next question, Gurmeet, which is very, very interesting to many of our viewers. Right? So, the aspiring future thought leaders would like to learn from the mistakes. Right? So, can you share some mistakes that future thought leaders must avoid aligning their goals better?
Suddenly when this COVID thing happened, people started talking about employee wellness programs, mental wellness, and all of that. But I feel that shouldn't these have been existing from the very beginning? I mean, why is that just because of this COVID and people are not well, and suddenly we talk about mental wellness? But that's always, it should become like the fabric of the organization, understanding the pain areas of employees, understanding, being more sensitive to people. And you don't need surveys to understand how your people are doing all the time. It's basically being more empathetic, like I said, towards people, and managers need to start being kinder to is something that I feel is something that we should start doing it, not because of COVID, but it should become the culture of the organization. Similarly, we used to look at the policies, or maybe once in a year, we used to say, okay, let's review the policies. But I think with the volatile environment that we are there in today, it's very important that just keep looking at your policies, how they are impacting your people, whether they are helpful, they're not helpful, whether they make lives easy, they make life difficult. Try to be simple is something that I would say. Try to be kind of do things minimize them, and just yeah, these are a few things which at least I have learned, is that it's the simplicity that matters in the processes, and how you're dealing with people rather than making things too complex for ourselves. So that's good.
Great, Gurmeet. So, in fact, it's an honor for us to build this community, and we have been building this community of global thought leaders to cross-pollination of the knowledge, right? So, what are your thoughts about this initiative, Gurmeet?
I think it's brilliant. I think that what you guys are doing. You are bringing in thoughts of so many leaders on one platform, right? You are so for example, I mean, today you're talking to me, and I would love to hear what other people also say, because at the end of the day, it's all about shared learning. A lot of ideas that I have personally got to do is because I heard someone else do it. So I thought, why is that we cannot do the same? So I think this whole thing about sharing the learnings, having a platform where best practices can be shared, they can be learned, they can be disseminated. And I strongly believe in one concept, which I actually learned in Delphi, and we used to have an award for that. It was called stealing shamelessly. So we would actually kind of understand what are the best practices in Delphi worldwide. And we never felt ashamed of stealing a practice, and we would say that we've stolen it shamelessly, and we were even awarded for that. So I think, yeah, you guys are doing a great job. It'll really help.
Well, I would really like to thank Gurmeet for the wonderful conversation today. And yes, to all my viewers, I'm sure we have learned something new today from this spotlight session with Gurmeet. Uh, one big spotlight, would I would say, and that I'm sure all the future leaders will agree to it, is think about your people in the organization, because that's what I understood from the entire conversation. Think about your people, ensure that their journey, right from day one in the organization till the last date in the organization, is really amazing. It may be in the policies, it may be in the culture, maybe anything, right? We need to also ensure and understand that people makes a successful organization, even though you add technology to it. But yes, people play a vital role when it comes to success of an organization, and many more things to learn from this session. So yes, to all our viewers, all the best for the new video that we will be releasing, and it's going to be amazing, and a lot of learnings from this session. So we thank Gurmeet for the fabulous insight and for her time today. And yes, implementing certain things from the spotlight interview will definitely take you to the next level. So thank you so much, Gurmeet, for your time.
Thank you, Gurmeet. It was an honor and a privilege to speak with you.
Thank you.